I'm Jacqueline Howard.
I'm Ellen Ganopoulos.
And we are the Flying Dog Foundation. Hopefully you enjoy this story. It is a story that is very close to my heart. I love this story. I do want to give full disclosure before we start. Obviously, it's about a greyhound. If you don't know the story, he does not come to a good end. But we will not be graphic in what happens to him. We'll simply tell you what happened to him, and then that's just the beginning of the story. There's more that comes after. So sit back and enjoy, and we will start now. So you may have noticed that we do not say Guinefort. We call this dog Saint Guinefort, which is the actual pronunciation of his name, as far as I could tell. A lot of people kind of westernize it, Americanize it, if you will, and say Saint Guinefort. There's nothing wrong with saying it that way. It's just we are sticking to the actual pronunciation of Guinefort. Well, already a technical difficulty, Ellen. Okay. What is a saint? So here's the simple definition of what a saint is. It's someone who's recognized as having an exceptional degree of holiness, likeliness, or closeness to his or her God. A saint doesn't have to be officially declared a saint, called canonization, to be recognized as a saint. Different religions that recognize saints have their own specific definitions of what a saint is. The story of Saint Guinefort takes place in France during the 13th century. In medieval times, greyhounds were highly regarded in Europe. Only the most noble of families could have greyhounds, and if you were caught killing one, you could be, for example, in the country of Wales, executed as declared by the king. So they took their greyhounds very, very seriously, much as we do, because if somebody hurt my greyhound, I'd probably do something bad. The point is, greyhounds, as they are today, were very, very much treasured.
Okay, next slide.
Oh. You're so professional and sharp.
Okay. Okay, now on to Saint Guinefort. Guinefort was a greyhound who lived in the 13th century in a rural region of France near Châtillon-de-Chalaronne. Guinefort was a very much loved and trusted member of a noble family. One day, the nobleman left the family's castle, putting Guinefort in charge of keeping his infant son safe. When the nobleman returned, he found that the crib was turned over and the baby was missing. And there was Guinefort, his mouth and snout covered in blood, not his own.
The nobleman, overwhelmed with angst, went into a blind rage. How could Guinefort, this greyhound that he loved, have betrayed him by killing his baby? The nobleman unsheathed his sword, slaying the greyhound where he stood. But here's the thing. From behind the turned over crib came a cooing. It was the baby. Next to the safe and swaddled infant, covered with bloody dog bites, was a dead viper. The nobleman fell to his knees, screaming in utter grief and guilt over what he had done to his greyhounds. Guinefort, he realized, hadn't killed the baby. He saved the baby by risking his own life and killing the poisonous snake. Guinefort was a hero.
The nobleman buried his loyal greyhound in a well on the castle's property. He then created a shrine to Guinefort by planting trees around the gravesite. The story of Guinefort spread quickly across the region, and he was proclaimed a saint by the locals. Many would pray to him for help when they had some kind of need, such as healing an illness. Many referred to Guinefort as the healer of children. Some called him the patron saint of protecting children, and others additionally call him the patron saint of greyhounds.
So Ellen, let's talk about a cranky guy. He was very cranky. His name was Stephen of Bourbon, and Stephen was a 13th century Dominican friar, inquisitor, and Catholic Church authority. It's from Stephen that we have our first official record of Guinefort. After Stephen learned about the Greyhound saint, he wrote a treatise or a paper all about Guinefort and the folks that prayed to him. In the paper, he also denounced the veneration of Guinefort and described how he disinterred and destroyed the dog's bones and burned down the trees that the nobleman had planted around the grave as a shrine to his beloved greyhounds. At the same time, Stephen describes Guinefort and his murder as the greyhound's, quote, noble deed and his innocent death. The greyhoundsaint.com says that it seems that Stephen of Bourbon was not immune to the charms of Guinefort. Here's an excerpt from Stephen of Bourbon's treatise about Guinefort. We went to his place, we called together all the people on the estate, and we preached against everything that had been said. We had the dead dog disinterred and the sacred wood cut down and burnt, along with the remains of the dog. And I had an edict passed by the lords of the estate, warning that anyone going thenceforth to that place for any such reason would be liable to have his possessions seized and sold. Ironically, Stephen's attempt at eradicating the memory and the sainthood of Guinefort totally backfired. Oh man, Ellen, it was my big to-do, and there, all right. And it backfired.
This took a minute.
Had he not written about the Greyhound, Guinefort may very well have been lost to history. So some may not think much of Stephen, but he did a great service to the dog and added to the rich history of Greyhounds.
There you go. Okay. In the 13th century, the process for declaring someone a saint was straightforward. You simply declare that so-and-so was a saint, and voila, it was so. Fast forward to the 17th century, the Holy See, which is the head seat of government of the Catholic Church, granted sole authority by said church to designating saints. They refused to recognize Guinefort because he was a dog. In fact, the church prohibited veneration of Guinefort, keeping in line with Stephen of Bourbon's treatise. In the 17th and 18th centuries, like Stephen of Bourbon, the church threatened anyone who venerated Guinefort and continued to pray to him as a saint with the seizure and sale of their property. Other way.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you. The Greyhoundsaint.com expounds on the story of Guinefort by saying that, I quote, stories of martyred pets who performed a heroic deed have appeared in numerous cultures around the world, and some scholars have speculated that they have a common origin in the ancient Indian folktale, the Brahmin and the mongoose. There are also theories that the name Guinefort comes from an earlier saint about whom little is known. Folktales, traditions, and religious elements often borrow from other sources, and pre-existing elements may have inspired Guinefort, the Greyhound story. Regardless of the origin, the end result, in this case, a sainted greyhound, is quite unique.
Okay, there is a side story to Guinefort that involves another saint. His name is Saint Roch, that's spelled R-O-C-H. He lived in the 12th and 13th centuries and is known as the patron saint of dogs and dog lovers, among other things. Sometimes he's referred to as Saint Rocco. He's also known for coming to the aid of plague-infested areas and curing many of the disease victims without ever having contracted plague until he did, that is. When plague struck him, he went into the woods to die alone. But a dog that many claim was a greyhound found Saint Roch and began bringing him daily food, fresh water, and licking his wounds. There are those who identify this dog as Saint Guinefort. Never mind that the story is said to have taken place about 40 years after Guinefort was killed. Maybe the greyhound was Guinefort's ghost.
Whether or not the dog in Saint Roch's story was a greyhound or even Guinefort, consider this. Saints are celebrated once a year on their feast days. St. Roch's feast day is August 16th, and St. Guinefort is celebrated on August 22nd. Depending on where you live in the world, these dates can fall during what's called the dog days of summer. It's a period of 40 days when the brightest star, Sirius, appears in the sky. Sirius is also known as the dog star and part of Canis Major, a dog constellation. The Canis Major constellation, by the way, is a greyhound.
I love that.
I love it too. You can look for him now. I believe this is over us now. So that is the story of Guinefort and some of the history behind him. We have put together some resources. If you'd like to read more about him, we will post this information after the conclusion of this live presentation. There's also a film called The Sorceress that came out in 1987. There are two versions, the original French, and there is one in English. I found the English one on Amazon, and you can stream it for $1.99, Ellen. And you found one, didn't you? Did you find one? I believe you found the French version.
Yeah, the French version is on YouTube. It's free, but it's in French. So
there's that. We have this piece of art available on t-shirts and other merchandise in our Redbubble store. And we also have note cards with Guinefort on them in this particular piece of art. So any sales of this stuff goes directly to the charity. 20% that is goes to the charity. And of course, we will use it to help with the transports of greyhounds and sometimes other dogs to our rescue organizations. That is it for our presentation, Ellen.
I think it was really well put together. Jacqueline did most of the work on this, and most of the artwork that you see, Jacqueline put it together. So I wanted to thank you for all the work that you put into this presentation, which was, I thought, wonderful. Also, a big thank you for, in case I got misty, thank you for this guy. My birthday.
Yes. How can I forget?
Arrived yesterday in the mail, but she knows I have like an obsession with Easter Island, the story of which is also very interesting. So yesterday this moai showed up in the mail, and if I had gotten misty, a tissue was available. So thank you, my friend. I appreciate it very much.
You're very welcome. There aren't many people. Actually, there's no one else I would have sent that to, but you were perfect. And happy birthday to you, my friends.
Thank you very much.
I'm so glad you're my partner in this. Thank you for doing this
Back at
presentation
you.
with me. This was a lot of fun. I hope folks enjoyed it, and it will be available for replay immediately following this live presentation on our group page, the Flying Dog Foundation group. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.